My name is Kuldeep Singh Randhawa. This is one of many videos which will be embedded on my website called realrandhawa.com. This particular video may be sort of a surprise for most people, particularly most Canadians who are proud of their nation. And so it's going to be difficult for you to accept what I'm saying here. But believe me when I say this, it's all true and it's all happening. The reason why Canadians continue to be deceived by the politicians is because we do not have a media that is working effectively. Quite a number of Canadians who are not in a position of responsibility clearly know this. I've heard on many occasions, walking in the park or in the street, people kind of shouting, discussing this matter in a parking lot or outside a church. And I've seen this right across the board, that many Canadians are not happy with what's going on in Canada. To a point, a friend of mine who once said, "I don't know what it means anymore to be a Canadian." There was a bit of a desperation in that statement, but I could understand her. And so I want to say that most Canadians are very proud of their nation. And that's good. One should be proud of your nation. But not to the point where one remains silent and does not act according to law and does not speak out when something seriously is going wrong. So why is it that I'm making this video? Because it's not easy for me to make this video, and it's necessary because I can't see any change which is positive taking place in Canada at the present time. So if you consider the way the legal system is established, we say the Supreme Court of British Columbia. I have no issues with the word supreme in that title. The reason being, the word supreme is related with God. And those individuals within the court system, such as the judges, are often called Lord. And it's because these individuals who are considered honorable, they're kind of doing the duty which is expected of our Lord, of God itself. And that's why you have the word supreme. You're supposed to be doing good acts. But the way in which some of the people within the court system are operating is like supremacists. People who think they are above the law, think they can do whatever they want, and the public is going to keep coming to the courts, giving them respect, giving them honor, expect them to bow down to them, and they can continue with crimes. I don't think that's going to happen anymore, guys. So, if you can imagine that a person with 2 degrees, 2 decades of experience, in April of 2005 was investigated for a water tank which wasn't even built. Why is it that this person cannot get justice after 2 decades? First reason is pretty obvious. The media is not covering these stories. The second reason is we don't have a legal system that is functional, but we have a system which is very functional for doing crimes. We often refer to the courts as courts of law because they're supposed to follow the law. And I say, without any reservations, that particularly the experiences that I've had in the Supreme Court of British Columbia, in Vancouver and New Westminster, we do not have a court of law. I've often referred to the courthouse as crime houses. I've often referred to it as a court of lunatics because I can't find any better word to describe what is going on in these places where there's so much respect for judges and they are losing their respect through their own actions. So the reason justice is not achieved is because outside no one is talking about it. The victims are marginalized, they're ignored, and they go to churches and they go to, if you're a Sikh, you may go to a Sikh temple, and the response you get from those places is not very positive. I recall with a friend of mine doing 100 letters to various churches, not only Christian churches, but Sikh temples and Buddhist temples and mosques as well, and I didn't get a single response from those 100 letters, which is kind of indicating that there is a disconnect between the people and what is going on in Canada. It's almost as if they don't want to face the reality of what's taking place, and this is how we lose a nation. So I will say the reasons within the court why I've not been successful is because there's various crimes taking place, and some of those I will mention in this video, in the hopes that there is some lawmaker who would look upon this video and come up with a solution, because I'm kind of 6 months away from putting in my own efforts into this to change the legal system. A system can be changed very quickly by victims. I don't think it can be changed by those people who are abusing the law and benefiting from it, because it's a manipulation of the law which is unlawful. So you have this thing called the Rule 18, which is covered on the website. Rule 18 is basically the vexatious rule, and you'll see there's a lot of media coverage on that because they're saying we're going to clamp down on vexatious litigants. What they're really saying is they're going to clamp down on the victims, because when you abuse that rule, you're basically keeping the victims out of the courtroom. You're obstructing their physical path to the courts, where the Vancouver Registry will simply read some order that's issued by a judge and not accept an application. And they will almost at the counter make a judgment and say, Mr. Randhawa, you're vexatious, when they don't know nothing about what's going on inside the courthouse or the courtroom. They don't know, for example, that a judge could be corrupt. And so therefore the liability is then taken by these staff when they simply make a judgment. They would, for example, stamp an application to avoid some sort of a clash at the counter between a victim who's trying to get his application in, and they say it's forced filed. Well, there's no such thing as forced filing. It's either it's filed or it's not filed. And when you stamp it as forced filed, you're basically signaling to the court that this application should not have been accepted. So you're alerting the judge that this application is to be refused. There's no Supreme Court rules that says that you can stamp an application forced filed. And so it's an indicator to reject the application. That's one of the things that we need to change. Secondly, if a person goes into court and says there's a crime taking place inside the courthouse, because the courts are really established for solving disputes that can't be solved outside of court. So when people come to court and they are trying to resolve an issue and a person raises a complaint, I think there should be a process, a special hearing that can be held to deal with that one particular issue. I have been inside a courthouse representing myself because many lawyers do not act for you. And that is part of how the scams are working. Because part of the scam is lawyers are told Stay away from people who are declared as vexatious litigants, who clearly know that the person is not vexatious. So they know that this person is a victim of crime, and yet they walk away from these victims. The whole purpose of a lawyer is to help victims. That's what I would consider the primary function of a lawyer is to help the people who can't help themselves. It's like a client who comes to me, and I'm an engineer, and he says, "Mr. Randhawa, I need someone to design a beam." And I refuse him. Outside the office, there's a sign saying, Consulting Engineers Limited. And there's a decal on the table saying, Mr. Randhawa is a structural engineer. And he says to the client, "I can't help you with a calculation of a beam, can you leave?" Like, really, this is kind of what's happening. And those lawyers who are duty bound to follow the law are remaining silent and not acting for a victim. That's almost equivalent to someone running to the policeman and saying, "I need help. Someone's chasing me with a gun." And what does the policeman do? He starts running in the opposite direction instead of helping this person who's coming for help. Is this how this country is run? Where the police agencies are just, busy sitting at Tim Hortons enjoying donuts? Not that Tim Hortons is a bad place. I enjoy Tim Hortons myself. But guys, do your jobs. You're paid for a reason. This is a country which will not survive in this way. You cannot expect people to take on the role of what the police is doing and take on the role of what the lawyers should be doing. And if engineers went on strike, we don't expect, by the way, engineers cannot go on strike. But if they can, we don't expect those people out there to do their own calculations. The whole nation will come to a halt as far as engineering is concerned. But really, it could come to that if things are not solved very quickly in the legal profession. And this country is going to be in serious problems. And so we go to court thinking we are going before a judge. If that judge is aware of a crime, he or she cannot sit in any legal proceeding. It's called a conflict of interest. So I can go on forever, but you've got a system here where sheriffs are searching people as if they're walking in with some kind of a weapon. The only weapon I've carried is a pen, and I've been searched and harassed and pushed around by sheriffs. I've had my property stolen in Westminster before Madam Justice Murray. I've reached out to Madam Justice Choi, who was involved in the family proceedings, which, by the way, were not family proceedings. I've actually designated a new form of proceeding where the judges are corrupt and the lawyers are corrupt. I've called it crimes in court, where the proceedings are of crime. And so this is how one should look at it, because it's a proceeding that is there to ensure that a crime is done. And sometimes that crime is done in such a way that certain parties who have to be harmed are actually denied justice intentionally, or the other person is entrapped into a crime. So now you've got a situation where a husband and a wife are at odds at each other, where a brother is filing an action against me because he thinks I'm about to do something, but basically it's misinformation by his lawyer. And so that's how these proceedings actually start. Proceedings are actually vexatious. And I'm defending these vexatious proceedings, but in ensuring that I don't get justice, the abuse of the vexatious rule is applied to the victims who are capable of defending. And when a lawyer doesn't come forward, then the person like myself, who is aggressive at defending himself, is able to succeed, and then the sheriff's office is deployed as like some kind of a gang to harass and intimidate victims who are trying to get justice. And the Vancouver staff basically do not do the function of a registry. And so they block the applications. That's obstruction of justice. And so because so many people are involved in these activities, this is why they're using the vexatious rule to block justice for many people. And that's all I'm going to say as part of this video. I will make other videos. Thank you.